Hello and welcome to your guide to business protection. I'm Ian Finch, a Protection Solutions Manager for Aviva with a specialism, some say expertise, in this market. This video is designed to talk you through the fundamental aspects of dealing with businesses, to give you an edge, if you will, and help you effectively write more business protection. You might not currently be in this market, or perhaps you might already be in it, but want to expand. Either way, this video is a great introduction or refresher. There are three main sections I'm going to walk you through, or you can skip to the section you'd like more information on. Firstly, we're going to talk about why business protection and the opportunity it presents. Then we'll talk about the different types of business, and finally we'll stitch it all together by looking at how Aviva can help you. Firstly, looking at one of the main barriers to business protection and the fact it can be perceived as being complex, I'm here to make it a more comfortable conversation and help you understand why business protection could be vital for your clients and the risks they face operating without it. So let's look at the size of the business protection opportunity. Now, the average case size of a business protection case with Aviva is currently around £338,000, which is considerably higher than personal protection. There are 4.5 million small to medium enterprises in the UK, and we know that not enough businesses in that market are protected. In fact, the vast majority have no protection. This presents a huge opportunity for you to go for. So why such a lack of protection? It could be due in part to the Superman scenario, where we think people think they're immortal, they think it's never going to happen to them. But in reality, it could. Let's have a look at the number of people in a business versus their age and their chances of dying. As you can see, the odds are very high, which poses a very, very real risk and makes a strong case to your clients as to why it's so important not to take chances with their future business security. An often overlooked point to mention is that there are many family-run businesses in the UK, so it's important to also talk to them about their family protection needs in addition to those of their company. And it's great for you as an advisor because you'll get the double whammy. You'll sell them on the backs of their life, but also on the backs of their business, and both are vitally important. Now, we at Aviva have developed a range of tips and training tools to help you with these conversations. Why not call our protection sales and support team on the number opposite to get your free guide? Now we're going to talk about the different types of business protection, and the first one of those is key person cover. Now, key person cover has been around for a long time. In fact, it goes way back to 1944 when the then Chancellor of the Exchequer, Sir John Anderson, decided that if you put a policy in force for a key person, and a key person could be anyone who has a significant effect on the profit of the company, if you put a policy in force for that key person and you matched three criteria, then you could offset the premiums against the profit of the company before tax, thus making it a very affordable product. Those three criteria were quite simply, firstly, that it must be a short-term policy. Now, Sir John Anderson never clarified exactly what was meant by a short-term policy, but generally it's been interpreted as to be a policy that runs between 5 to 10 years. Secondly, there must be an employee-employer relationship. And thirdly, that it must just be to cover loss of profits. There must be no other factors included in the sum assured. Over the years, those rules have been clarified, and in fact, the Inland Revenue, or HMRC as they are now, have not made it transparent. They haven't promoted the changes. However, if you look on the HMRC website, you'll see that under Business Income Manual 45,525, it's been decreed that you can now run a policy not for a short term, but up to the full length of useful service the individual can have with that company. So therefore, you've got the possibility now, if you've not got into key person before, to look at existing key person policies and perhaps consider extending them or rebroking them, because you can run them for a much longer length of time with your client. Now let's move on and have a look at partnership protection. With a partnership, it's quite simply two or more people coming together to make a mutual profit. So lots of people can fall in under the partnership legislation who perhaps don't necessarily think they're in a partnership. If a partner dies and there's no specific agreement in place, then incredibly the Partnership Act of 1890 dictates what happens to the deceased's interest in the partnership. Remember, this is a partnership, so there's no shares, it's an interest in the partnership. The Partnership Act of 1890 dictates what happens on death. And it's a bit like if you die as a person without a will, the laws of intestacy kick in and dictate what will happen to your estate. It's exactly the same in the business world. The Partnership Act of 1890 dictates what happens. The first thing the Partnership Act says, that if there's no other agreement in place, then on the death of a partner, the partnership is dissolved. So that partnership can't actually carry on trading. What they can do is set up a new partnership and trade with existing business clients, but they can't take any money out of that new partnership till they've resolved the debt that they're now encumbered with, which is equivalent to the deceased's value of his interest or her interest in the partnership. How's that debt worked out? Well, quite simply, according to the Partnership Act of 1890, then the deceased's capital account is returned to his estate. All the capital accounts are totalled up, and any growth in the business is then divided equally amongst all the partners, with an equal share being returned to the deceased's estate. So you can imagine if there's a senior partner, he might not be happy to discover that a junior partner is entitled to an equal share of that growth in effect in the business. But that's what happens according to the Partnership Act of 1890. How do you get around that? How do you avoid that happening? Well, quite simply, you put an agreement in place. Just like you put a will in place for a person, you put an agreement in place that dictates what happens on the death of a partner to the partnership. Fundamentally, there are just three sorts of agreements that you can put in place. You can either have an automatic accrual arrangement, you can have a buy and sell arrangement, or you can have a cross-option agreement. What I'd like to do is just very briefly just take you through each of them in turn and give you a heads up about what each of them do and how each of them has a strength, but one of them generally should be avoided. So let's look at a partnership in terms of the first one that I mentioned, which was an automatic accrual agreement. Quite simply, the partners take out a life policy for what they feel their interest in the partnership is worth, and then on their death, that is paid out to their estate as compensation for their interest in the partnership, and their interest in effect is passed back to the surviving partners. So very simple, but only appropriate for a partnership because it has no legal status in England, Wales and Northern Ireland. Bear in mind in Scotland, partnerships do have a legal status. The next agreement is the buy and sell arrangement, and this is one generally that you wouldn't use because this is seen as a binding arrangement, i.e. on the death of a partner, the interest in the partnership is passed back to the surviving partners and a life policy would pay out to supply the compensation for that interest in the partnership. However, HMRC say that because it's a binding contract, they won't grant what's known as business property relief. Now, business property relief negates inheritance tax on the sale of unincorporated businesses, or in effect partnerships, to the tune of 100%. So potentially by using this agreement, you could generate an inheritance tax liability. That brings us to the third agreement, which is by far and away the most popular, and this is a cross-option agreement. Quite simply, if one side exercises the option, the other side has to go ahead and commit to the arrangement. So if a partner's deceased estate says to the surviving partners, we want the surviving partners to buy our interest in the partnership, then the surviving partners have to go ahead and purchase it. And vice versa, if the surviving partners say they want to purchase the interest from the deceased's estate, then the deceased estate has to sell it. So it's great from the partner's point of view because they've got control. That interest in the partnership isn't going to perhaps pass to the hands of the competition. But vitally importantly, it's an option. So if no one exercises the option, nothing happens. Therefore, according to the HMRC, then that's not a binding contract, which means business property relief will be granted, which means there will be no inheritance tax liability. Very simply, that is partnership protection. And now what we'd like to look at is the veil of incorporation. These are for companies that have shares. They can either be private limited companies or public limited companies. And you'll know which are which by after the company's name it'll either have PLC or LTD, limited. With public limited companies, generally they'll be floated and generally they'll be out of your remit because they'll probably have this protection in place. So what we're going to focus in on today is private limited companies. Now with private limited companies, they need a variety of forms to set themselves up in business. But the one you're interested in as an advisor is the Articles of Association, because those dictate the internal workings of the company. What they will say, and it's a document, generally about 80 pages long or so, but it'll be indexed on the front. What you want to look for is what happens on death. Because all too often with the Articles of Association, they adopt what's known as Table A from the Companies Act of 1985. In fact, there's Table A to either 6 tables, but everyone just refers to them as Table A. Now what that says is that should a director die, and he owns the shares outright, he can do with them what he likes, which isn't quite right, of course, because he owns those shares outright. But of course, to the surviving directors, that can present a problem because potentially he could sell them perhaps to the competition down the road, or he could perhaps pass them on to his spouse, and his spouse might then come in and try and run the business. And that's not necessarily what surviving directors would want. So to bypass that, what the directors need to put in place is what's known as a preemption agreement. And quite simply, this says what the directors would like to do on death. Now, with the agreements that are available to dictate what happens on death, unlike a partnership, there's no automatic accrual option because a company has a legal status which a partnership doesn't. So with a company, you're just given 2 choices. You can either put in place a rigid buy and sell arrangement, and for those that saw the partnership aspect of this video will realise that's not appropriate because HMRC see it as a binding contract, which means they won't grant business property relief, which means there's an inheritance tax liability. So in reality, the agreement that should be put in place generally will be a cross-option agreement. Quite simply, this is an option, so there's no compulsion, there's no binding element to it, which means that the revenue will grant business property relief, which will mean potentially there will be no inheritance tax liability. Now if we move on and look at another aspect around business protection and companies, and that's loan protection. Now with loan protection, be looking to either cover a commercial loan, a director's loan account, a personal guarantee, or perhaps an overdraft. Now as a starting point to identify this, you'd perhaps look at the balance sheet of a company to see which of these are in place. But what you need to remember is that with the life assurance element, the protection to that loan, it should be noted that HMRC do not see this as an incidental cost to getting the finance. You'll get the finance without having to buy the life protection element. So therefore there is no tax relief available for the life assurance part of the finance deal. Now, as you look for new opportunities in the business protection market, a great way to find about new or existing businesses in your area or those clients that you want to deal with is to visit the Companies House website. Now, you can get certain information for free on the website, or perhaps you have to pay a small amount to get in-depth information, but it is fantastic for giving you the information behind the company about potentially what they would have in place. So how can Aviva help you? Well, as the UK's largest insurance company, we offer UK businesses a broad range of insurance solutions, from legal protection to buildings insurance. That's why we understand that business protection is an important part of ensuring your client's livelihood, and that livelihood can continue should the worst happen. We're serious about helping you get more clients protected, so here are our pledges to you. We understand the need to deliver a business service to advisors that is fast, efficient and as personal as possible, however large or complex the client. That's why you'll be assigned a dedicated case handler from the start. We're well known for our strength in personal protection. When it comes to business clients, our approach is exactly the same. We have specialists in tax and trust, especially for businesses, so the right advice is never more than a phone call away. We aim to beat a competitor's premium for business protection cases through our price-beating service. That's for applications of £1 million or over. And we also offer strong competitive rates for smaller cases as well. These pledges are supported by exactly the same financial stability, underwriting standards and award-winning claims handling expertise we bring to personal protection. To add to this, here's our service promise. We have a specialist business protection team who provides expert support for tax, trusts, new business and underwriting, specifically for business protection cases. Our underwriters are on hand throughout the process to answer any questions and work with you to provide an efficient service for your clients from start to finish. Following receipt of a fully completed application form, we will register the application within 24 hours. Our specialist underwriters pick up the application as soon as it's registered. We will contact you to confirm our requirements within 24 hours of our specialist underwriters picking up the application using your preferred method of contact. We action every single piece of underwriting evidence we receive within 48 hours. Within 24 hours of our underwriters making their decision, we telephone you with that decision. Add to all this a truly competitive critical illness proposition with more ABI Plus definitions than ever before, and you've got the Aviva business case for protection. Last but not least, we're there when it matters most for your clients. We have a consistently strong claims record and low non-disclosure, as well as an award-winning claims team. For further support, visit our business protection website and request your free business protection pack. At which point, I've been Ian Finch. Thank you very much for watching. Thank you.